All right, so have you ever felt like you're just spinning your wheels? Like you're putting in the effort, you're hustling, but you're not really getting anywhere. Like you're going through the motions, but lacking uh, a real sense of direction. It's that feeling where you're working hard, but not really making progress. Like, remember that time I tried to learn to play the guitar? I bought this fancy acoustic guitar, even signed up for lessons, but I just couldn't, I couldn't get the hang of it. My fingers fumble on the strings and the chords, they all sounded wrong. So I ended up getting frustrated and just gave up. Looking back, I realized my problem wasn't lack of effort; it was a lack of strategy. I was so focused on the idea of playing the guitar that I never stopped to really think about the how. And that's what we're diving into today: the difference between good strategy and bad strategy. We're unpacking Richard Rumelt's Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, a book that breaks down this often misunderstood concept in a surprisingly insightful way. So let's get into it. Rumelt, he starts by defining what good strategy actually is. And you know what? It's not just about setting these big, hairy, audacious goals. It's not about giving, those motivational speeches that get everyone all pumped up. It's about, understanding the terrain, identifying the real obstacles you're facing, and then this is key, formulating a focused plan to overcome those obstacles. It's about using your resources wisely and coordinating your actions to achieve a specific objective. He uses the example of Lord Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar. Back in 1805, Napoleon's forces were uh, they were threatening to invade England, and the stakes were incredibly high. Now Nelson could just gone with the traditional line of battle tactics, but he realized that wouldn't cut it. So he saw an opportunity to exploit the weaknesses in the Franco-Spanish fleet. So he did something really interesting. He divided the British fleet into two columns, and drove them straight into the enemy line, hitting them perpendicularly. Brilliant, right? And this totally disrupted their formation, and the British won a decisive victory. What's so fascinating about this example is that Nelson didn't just rely on brute force. He took a step back, analyzed the situation, identified those critical factors, and then he devised a plan that leveraged those factors to his advantage. And that's the essence of good strategy, isn't it? It's about recognizing those crucial pivot points that can make all the difference. Now, on the flip side, we have bad strategy, and Remo argues that this is more common than we might think. He calls out what he calls template-style strategy, where companies just fill in the blanks with buzzwords like vision, mission, and values, without any real substance behind them. It's like writing a generic cover letter that you send to every job you apply for, regardless of the position or the company, right? It's all fluff, no meat. It might sound impressive at first glance, but it lacks the specificity and the focus to actually achieve anything meaningful. And you know what else can lead to bad strategy? Blind faith in charisma. Rumelt, he points out that charisma can actually be a liability when it comes to developing effective strategies. He cites Peter Drucker, who famously said that effective leadership doesn't depend on charisma. Leaders like Dwight Eisenhower, George Marshall, Harry Truman, they might not have been known for their charm or their magnetic personalities, but they were highly effective because they focused on substance, on making tough decisions, and on getting things done. They didn't get caught up in the hype or the cult of personality. And then there's the whole new thought movement and this obsession with positive thinking. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for being optimistic and believing in yourself. But Rumelt argues that this can lead to a sort of magical thinking that undermines good strategy. He gives this example of Henry Ford, a brilliant innovator, but also someone who dabbled in mysticism and believed that success could be achieved through sheer willpower and visualization. Now, while it's important to have a positive outlook, it's equally important to be grounded in reality and understand the limitations of just wishing things into existence. It's like, remember that time I tried to manifest a parking spot right in front of the coffee shop? I visualized it. I sent out, positive vibes. But guess what? I still had to circle the block for like 10 minutes before finding a spot. Sometimes you just have to accept that you can't control everything. So we've seen how good strategy is about focus, about understanding the challenges, and about having a clear plan of action. But what exactly are those the elements that make up a good strategy? Rumelt gives us a framework. He calls it the kernel of good strategy, and this is where things get really interesting. The first element is what he calls a guiding policy. Now, this isn't just a lofty goal or a vague aspiration. It's a specific approach, a method, a way of thinking about the challenge you're facing. Think of it like a set of principles that guide your decision making. A great example of this is George Kennan's containment policy during the Cold War. It wasn't just about stopping the spread of communism. It was about a whole approach to foreign policy, about using diplomacy, economic pressure, and strategic alliances to contain Soviet influence. It provided a framework for action, a way of thinking about the problem, and it shaped U.S. policy for decades. The second element is coherence. This means that all your actions and resources should be aligned and coordinated to support your guiding policy. It's about making sure that everyone's on the same page and working towards the same goal. Think about Hannibal's victory at the Battle of Cannae. He orchestrated these brilliant maneuvers using his cavalry and his infantry in a coordinated attack that completely outmaneuvered the Roman army. It was a masterpiece of coherence where each unit played a specific role in achieving the overall objective. And the third element, and this is a big one, is anticipating the actions and reactions of others. You can't develop a good strategy, in a vacuum. You have to consider how your competitors, your customers, even your own team will respond to your moves. A great example of this is Toyota's investment in hybrid technology. They saw the writing on the wall. They knew that fuel efficiency was going to be a major issue in the future. So they made this strategic bet on hybrid technology, and it paid off, big time. They weren't just reacting to the market; they were anticipating it, and that gave them a huge advantage. The fourth element is all about identifying pivot points. These are those crucial imbalances, those moments of opportunity where you can exploit a weakness or leverage a strength to gain an advantage. It's about recognizing those moments when the tide can turn in your favor. Think about President Reagan's challenge to Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall. It was a bold move, a strategic gamble. It completely shifted the dynamics of the Cold War. It was a pivot point that helped to bring about the end of the Soviet Union.
And finally, the fifth element is having proximate objectives. These are those achievable steps, those milestones along the way that lead you toward your larger goal. It's about breaking down a complex challenge into smaller, more manageable chunks. Rumelt uses the example of NASA's challenge in designing the Surveyor lunar lander. They didn't know what the moon's surface was like, so they couldn't just design a lander based on assumptions. So they had to focus on proximate objectives, like developing a spacecraft that could land safely under a variety of conditions. By achieving these smaller goals, they built momentum and gained the knowledge they needed to ultimately land on the moon. So we've got our guiding policy, our coherence, our anticipation of others' actions, our pivot points, and our proximate objectives. These are the five key elements of the kernel of good strategy. And what's really cool about this framework? It's not just applicable to business.
It can be applied to any area of life where you're facing a challenge and need to develop a plan of action, whether you're trying to launch a new project, learn a new skill, or just get your life organized. These principles can help you achieve your goals. But wait, there's more. A good strategy, it isn't static. It needs to be dynamic, adaptable, able to evolve as the landscape changes. And that's what we'll be diving into next. Okay, so we've talked about the kernel of good strategy, those 5 key elements that Rumelt lays out. But the world isn't standing still, right? Things change, new challenges pop up, and a good strategy needs to be able to adapt and grow. It's like, remember when I decided to renovate my kitchen? I had this vision, this beautiful modern space with all these new appliances, but then I realized I hadn't factored in, the plumbing, the electrical, the permits, all these unexpected complications. So my initial plan, it had to evolve as I encountered new obstacles and discover new possibilities. And that's exactly what Rumelt emphasizes. A good strategy, it's not a one-time thing. It's a living, breathing process. He talks about the importance of recognizing waves of change and using them to your advantage. Think about Cisco Systems, for example. They were this little startup back in the 80s, making routers and stuff. But they saw the potential of the internet. They understood that data networking was going to be huge, and they rode that wave of change all the way to the top. They didn't just adapt; they anticipated, they invested, they became a leader in the industry. Now, Rumelt also digs into how companies can create value in a changing landscape. He talks about deepening your existing advantage, like Toyota did with their hybrid technology. They kept refining it, making it better, more efficient, more appealing to customers. Then there's broadening the scope of your advantage. Like, remember when Disney went all in on action adventure movies under Michael Eisner? They didn't abandon their classic animation, but they saw an opportunity to, expand their appeal, reach a wider audience, and it worked. They created a whole new revenue stream while staying true to their brand. And then you've got creating higher demand for what you offer. Like think about the whole pomegranate craze a few years back. Roll International, the company behind PM Wonderful, they basically created a market out of thin air. They marketed pomegranates as this superfood, this health elixir, and people went nuts for it. They strategically positioned their product to tap into these emerging health trends and consumer desires. And finally, there's strengthening the isolating mechanisms that protect your advantage from imitation. Like take PACCAR, a company that makes trucks. They focus on this specific niche, building high-quality customized trucks for owner-operators. They don't try to compete with the big guys, on volume. They focus on craftsmanship, on building relationships, on this unique value proposition that's hard to replicate. But growth for growth's sake can be a trap. Rumelt tells this story about Crown Cork and Seal, the company that made, well, you guessed it, Crown Corks and Seals. They were doing really well, focusing on this niche market, serving smaller customers with these specialized products. But then a new CEO came in, William Avery, and he decided to go all in on growth through acquisition. So they bought up all these different companies, expanded rapidly, but their profitability it plummeted. Why? Because they were chasing growth without a clear strategy, without understanding how these acquisitions fit into their core strength. It was like trying to build a house by just adding random rooms without a blueprint. And then there's the story of Telecom Italia in the late 90s. Their CEO, Franco Bernabé, was totally convinced that the future was all about convergence between telecommunications and media. So he orchestrated this massive merger with a media company, but it flopped. Why? Because the convergence he envisioned never really materialized. He got caught up in the hype in this trend that turned out to be a dead end. So what's the lesson here? Growth needs to be strategic. It needs to be aligned with your strength. It needs to be sustainable, and it needs to be driven by a clear understanding of the market. Rumelt talks about identifying the attractor states in your industry, those points of equilibrium where things are likely to settle. Are you positioned to capitalize on those trends? Are you thinking critically about the forces that are shaping your industry? And then there's the whole issue of forecasting, right? We tend to overestimate the rate of change and underestimate the staying power of the big players. The incumbents don't get caught up in the hype. Step back, look at the historical trends, think for yourself. But even with all this, Rumel reminds us that good strategy isn't just about intuition or gut feeling. It's about what he calls the science of strategy. He argues that a new strategy is essentially a hypothesis. You need to be willing to experiment, to gather data, to adjust your approach based on what you learn. It's like, remember when I tried to, bake sourdough bread? I followed the recipe. I was meticulous. But my first few loaves were total bricks. So I had to experiment with the starter, the temperature, the proving time until I finally got it right. Strategies like that, you got to be willing to tweak and refine it as you go. Now, Rumelt also talks about the importance of recognizing anomalies, those facts that don't quite fit the conventional wisdom. They could be signs of emerging trends or opportunities for disruption. Pay attention to them. They might be the key to your next breakthrough. And here's a big one. Beware of social herding. Don't just follow the crowd. Don't get caught up in groupthink. Think for yourself. Challenge the prevailing assumptions. Be willing to go against the grain if you believe it's the right thing to do. It's like remember when everyone was buying those fidget spinners? They were all the rage, but I just couldn't see the point. Sometimes the popular thing isn't the right thing. And finally, don't forget the importance of the outside view. Don't get so caught up in your own little bubble that you lose sight of the bigger picture. Take a step back, look at the situation objectively. What are the historical trends? What are the potential pitfalls? The outside view can help you avoid costly mistakes and make more informed decisions. So we've covered a lot of ground here. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a couple of stories that really illustrate the power and the pitfalls of good strategy. All right, so remember that whole .com boom back in the late 90s. Everyone was going crazy for internet companies throwing money at anything with a .com at the end of its name. And, amidst all that hype, there was this company called Global Crossing. They were laying fiber optic cables across the Atlantic, connecting the U.S. and Europe. And for a while, they were riding high. But their strategy was ultimately flawed. They assumed that demand for bandwidth would just, keep growing exponentially forever. But they forgot one crucial thing: fiber optic cables. They were becoming a commodity. The price was dropping. Competition was heating up, and Global Crossing's massive investments started to look like a bad bet. They got blinded by the hype, by the inside view, and they crashed and burned. And then, of course, there's the 2008 financial crisis. A perfect storm of bad strategy, flawed thinking, and just plain old greed. The housing bubble was inflating, fueled by easy credit and these complex financial instruments that nobody really understood. The experts, the policymakers, they were all caught up in this collective delusion that that the good times would never end. They ignored the warning signs, the historical precedents, the basic principles of risk and reward. And when the bubble finally burst, the whole system came crashing down. So what does all this mean for you, in your everyday life? Rumelt's book, it isn't just about business. It's about thinking clearly, making smarter decisions, and avoiding those costly mistakes that can derail us. Next time you're facing a challenge, whether it's at work, at home, or in your personal life, take a moment to step back and ask yourself, am I just pushing harder, or am I actually thinking strategically? What's the real challenge here? Am I missing a key insight? Am I falling prey to social herding, or getting stuck in the inside view? Rumelt talks about this thing called the inertia of success. How companies can get trapped by their own past victories. They become complacent, risk averse, and ultimately vulnerable to disruption. And this applies to us as individuals too. We can get stuck in our routines and our comfort zones, afraid to challenge ourselves or try new things. So here's my challenge to you. What would it take to break free from the inertia of success in your own life? What new strategies could you embrace? What bold moves could you make? What assumptions could you challenge? What risks could you take? Remember, good strategy is about clear thinking, focused action, and the courage to question the status quo. It's about understanding the landscape, identifying the real challenges, and crafting a plan to overcome them. It's about learning from the past, anticipating the future, and making smart decisions in the present. So go out there, think strategically, and make things happen.